Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are tackling something really fundamental, electrostatic energy. It's all about how energy works when you have electric charges interacting. Think work, force, energy storage. It's the basis for, well, a lot of things.
Exactly. Our mission really is to figure out the work it takes to put together any arrangement of charges. If you bring charges close, you're either fighting their repulsion or getting helped by their attraction. That effort, that work, it gets stored as potential energy.
Right. And the challenge is tracking that energy, calculating it, and maybe the biggest question, where is it stored?
Precisely. Let's start simple. Two charges, $2 and $2 too.
Okay, I remember this one. It's proportional to the product, $20 and $2 and
Yep. And inversely proportional to how far apart they are, $2. So like charges, positive energy, you had to push them together.
and opposite charges, negative energy. The field kind of pulled them together for you.
You got it. Now, what if you have like a million charges, not just two?
Ah, that's where superposition comes in, right? You just add up the energy for every single pair.
Exactly that. You take charge 1 with 2, 1 with 3, 1 with 4, then 2 with 3, 2 with 4, all the way through, every single pair. Conceptually simple, but can get tedious to actually calculate for many charges.
Okay, that hand us points. But we often deal with continuous stuff, right? Like a solid ball of charge. The sources walk through, assembling a uniformly charged sphere, total charge, CQ dollar, radius psi. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a classic problem. You have to imagine building it piece by piece, like bringing in infinitesimally thin shells of charge, DQ dollars, from way out at infinity. You start with nothing, bring in the first shell, then the next shell has to be pushed against the repulsion of the first one, the next against the first two.
So you're doing work against the charge that's already there, which keeps increasing.
Right. You integrate all that work done shell by shell until you've built the whole sphere.
And the final result for the total energy stored, $2. What's the key takeaway there?
The scaling is what's really important. The energy dollars ends up being proportional to Q squared.
Squared.
Yeah, QTT dollars. And it's inversely proportional to the radius. So if you double the charge, you get 4 times the energy.
Or if you pack the same charge into half the space, you double the energy. Makes sense. It's harder to pack it tighter.
Precisely. $2 comes out to $35 Q2 for epsilon G, for if you want the full formula. It gives a concrete number for the energy locked up in that charge configuration.
Okay, so we can calculate the energy inside a charged object. What about devices designed to store energy, like capacitors? Or condensers, as they used to call them?
Perfect transition. Capacitors are all about this. We define their capacitance by dollars. By dollars is the voltage across them.
And charging one up is basically doing work, right? Moving charge from one plate to the other against the voltage.
Exactly. You could think of it like moving tiny bits of charge, DQQ dollars, across the potential difference.
Yeah.
But $5 itself is increasing as you add more dollars.
Yeah.
So the work needed for each little QQ keeps going up.
And when you sum all that work, what's the final energy stored?
You get the famous result. 1, 12, Q2CC. Or, maybe even more common, $1 to CV22.
That half. Why the half again?
Because the voltage isn't constant while you charge it. It increases linearly from 0 up to $4 as the charge goes from 0 to Q. The average voltage you're working against is dV22. So the total work is Q to pole times the average voltage, QV2, which gives you 12 QV2 tols, and using QCV, that becomes 12 CV2 tol.
Okay, that makes sense. So we used work to find energy. But can we flip it? Use energy to find forces, like finding the force between the plates of a parallel plate capacitor, using virtual work.
Yes, absolutely. That's a really powerful technique. The idea is you calculate the stored energy, 2 tols, then you imagine moving one plate just a tiny bit, say a distance delta day. The stored energy will change slightly, let's call it delta UA. This change in energy must equal the work done by the electric force during that displacement, which is delta delta T.
So Vata du delta EC, essentially the energy changes with distance.
Exactly. And when you run through that calculation for the parallel plates, you find the attractive force for it is Q dollars, 2 epsilon A, where A is the plate area.
Okay, $5 P22 to epsilon A, and that connects to the electric field between the plates, E dollars.
Right. The field E dollars between the plates is Q 2 epsilon.
Yeah.
So you can rewrite the force as $5 as Q times E0 $2.
There's that factor of 12 again. Why Eisener 2 Why doesn't the whole charge Q through on one plate feel the whole field E dollars dollar?
This is a subtle but crucial point about conductors. The total field E dollars between the plates is created by the charges on both plates. Let's say plate A and plate B. The field from plate B alone is Eisener 2. The field from plate A alone is also Eisener 2. Now, the charges on plate A can't exert a net force on themselves.
Right, you can't lift yourself by your bootstraps.
Exactly. So the charges on plate A only feel the force from the field created by plate B, which is E022. Another way to think. The field goes from E$, just outside the conductor surface down to 0 inside. The charges sitting right at the surface experience the average of the field just outside and just inside, which is E$ plus E02, E022.
Okay, I think I get it. It's the field from the other plate that's doing the pulling. Makes sense. Now let's zoom out. We've talked about spheres and capacitors. How does this electrostatic energy help us understand, say, why materials stick together, like salt, NaCl?
Oh, absolutely. This is where it gets really powerful. Think about a crystal of table salt. It's a very stable structure, this checkerboard, of positive sodium ions and negative chloride ions. We can use electrostatics to calculate the dissociation energy, how much energy you'd need to supply to break the crystal apart into individual separate ions.
So you pick one ion, say a sodium in the middle.
Right, and you calculate its potential energy due to its interaction with all the other ions in the whole crystal. Its nearest neighbors are 6 chlorides, that's attractive, negative energy. The next neighbors are 12 sodiums, that's repulsive, positive energy. Then more chlorides, attractive.
Wow, that sounds like a geometric nightmare to sum up. An infinite alternating series.
It is complex geometrically, yes. But thankfully, the series converges quite quickly because the War-dollar dependence means the contribution from distant ions drops off. Physicists calculated this sum for the cubic lattice, and it boils down to the energy being proportional to its whale, where the is the electron charge and is the ionolar spacing, times a specific number around 1.747. That number, the Madelung constant, wraps up all the geometry.
And does this calculation actually match reality?
Amazingly well. If you calculate the energy needed to vaporize a mole of NaCl using this purely electrostatic model, the result is within about 10% of the experimentally measured heat of vaporization.
10%, just from electrostatics. That's incredible. It shows how dominant these forces are in ionic solids.
It really is. It confirms that our basic electrostatic laws are powerful predictors of material properties.
Okay, from crystals down to the nucleus. We're talking tiny scales now, like 10, 13 centimeters. Does electrostatics play a role inside the nucleus?
It does, but in a different way. Inside the nucleus, you have protons, which are positively charged, packed very close together. So there's a huge electrostatic repulsion trying to blow the nucleus apart.
Right, that Coulomb repulsion fights against the strong nuclear force holding it together.
Exactly. And we can use this electrostatic energy to understand subtle differences between nuclei. Consider mirror nuclei like Boron-11 and Carbon-11. Boron-11 have 5 protons, 6 neutrons. Carbon-11 has 6 protons, 5 neutrons. They have the same total number of particles, 11, just swapped a proton and a neutron.
So structurally, they should be almost identical, except for the electrical part, because Carbon-11 has 1 extra proton.
Precisely. The difference in their total energy, which we can measure experimentally, should be almost entirely due to the extra electrostatic repulsion energy in the Carbon-11 nucleus because of that 6th proton.
And can we calculate that extra electrical energy using the sphere model again?
We can. We treat the nucleus approximately as a uniformly charged sphere, just like we did before, but now with nuclear dimensions. We calculate the electrostatic energy for 6 protons and for 5 protons within that volume. The difference between those two calculated energies comes out to about 1.982 MeV, mega electron volts.
It's a measured energy difference.
It matches extremely closely. This tells us something profound. The laws of electrostatics work down to nuclear scales. And what's more, because the calculation depends on the radius A of our model sphere.
Comparing the calculation to the measurement lets you figure out the radius of the nucleus.
Exactly. That's how we get estimates for the nuclear radius, around $2 times 10^13 centimeters. It all ties together.
That's just amazing. Okay, so we've calculated energy by thinking about the work needed to assemble charges, crystal lattices, nuclei. But this kind of implies the energy is on the charges, somehow attached to them because they were the things we moved.
That's the intuitive picture, yes.
Yeah.
The work of assembly view. But there's a deeper, more fundamental way to think about it.
Which leads to that really big question you posed earlier. Where is the energy? Is it on the charges or somewhere else?
This is where things get really interesting and maybe a bit mind-bending. Through some mathematical manipulation, basically, using vector calculus identities like integration by parts on potential and field, we can rewrite the total energy $2 instead of summing over pairs of charges.
You express it in terms of the electric field. It permeates the space around the charges.
Exactly. The total energy $2 turns out to be equal to an integral over all of space of $2 times the electric field squared, $2.
E2D2, dV2, that's elegant.
It is, and it leads to a revolutionary idea. We can define an energy density, E-collar, an amount of energy per unit volume, stored right there in the space where the electric field exists. This energy density is $1 into $1.
Whoa. So the energy isn't on the charges after all. It's literally in the field, in the empty space between them.
That's the profound shift in perspective. Energy is stored locally, in the field itself. Wherever there's an electric field, there's energy stored in that region of space, proportional to the square of the field strength. Even if you could somehow make the charges disappear but leave the field behind, the energy would still be there, in the field.
That changes everything. It makes the field much more real, doesn't it? It's not just a calculation tool, it's the actual carrier of the energy.
It's one of the cornerstones of modern physics. Energy is conserved locally, carried by fields.
Okay, but beautiful as that is, doesn't it lead to a problem, a really big one? What happens if you apply this field energy idea to a single fundamental point charge, like an electron?
Ah, yes. The paradox of the point charge. This is where classical electrodynamics hits a wall. The electric field Euler of a point charge is proportional to 122 day. The energy density Euler is proportional to T dollar, so it goes like 142. Now, to get the total energy, you have to integrate that energy density $2 over all volume, dV Eulers. In spherical coordinates, dV Eulers has a factor of $2 too. So you're integrating something like $180 times R2 will under $2. With respect to $2, you have to integrate from the radius $2 all the way down to 2, the location of the point charge.
And the integral of $102 up to some value, that diverges, doesn't it? It goes to infinity at $2.
Exactly. The calculation tells us that the total electrostatic energy required to create a single zero-size point charge is infinite.
Infinite energy for one electron, that can't be right. That's physically impossible.
It's a fundamental inconsistency in the classical theory. It tells us that something about our picture is wrong at that very small scale. Maybe elementary particles like electrons aren't true mathematical points. Maybe they have some tiny non-zero size.
Or maybe the whole idea of continuously distributed field energy breaks down at that level.
Precisely. It signals that classical electrodynamics isn't the final word. We need something else, quantum mechanics, quantum field theory, to resolve this infinity. But it arises directly from this powerful, beautiful idea of energy being stored in the field.
So wrapping this up for you listening, we've seen how calculating the work to assemble charges lets us find stored energy. It works for simple pairs, charged spheres, capacitors.
And incredibly, it gives us real numbers for binding energies in things like salt crystals, and even helps us understand energy differences inside atomic nuclei, confirming electrostatics works at tiny scales.
But then we made that huge conceptual leap. The energy isn't really on the charges, it's in the electric field, filling the space around them. Energy density proportional to TTU.
A truly fundamental idea. Energy is stored locally in the field. That's perhaps the biggest takeaway. It changes how we think about forces and interactions.
Though it does leave us with that nagging paradox of the infinite energy for a point charge, hinting at deeper physics still to explore.
It certainly does. A beautiful theory that also points towards its own limitations.
An absolutely fascinating journey through electrostatic energy. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.